we're going to be looking at x-intercepts and y-intercepts. Now, if we look at any number plane, we already know that this is our y-axis, the y-axis, and across here is our x-axis. Okay, now what we're looking at is the intercepts of those axes. Okay, so what that means is when we have some sort of graph, okay, now this is going to be my x-intercept. Okay, now when y is equal to 0, this is my y-axis. Okay, now if my y value is equal to 0, okay, that's where my two x-intercepts are. Okay, so that's how we find our x-intercepts. In any equation of my graph, okay, if I have when y is equal to 0, that's when I find my x-intercept. Okay, so when y equals to 0, that's my two x-intercepts there. Now similarly, to find my y-intercept, that's when x is 0. Okay, so this is our x-axis. All my x values along here. When my x is equal to 0, that's when it intercepts with my y-axis, which we call our y-intercept. Okay, so finding our x-intercept and y-intercepts is not a challenge at all. Okay, all we have to do is, okay, if we're finding our x-intercepts, in our equation, we're going to substitute y is equal to 0. Okay, if I want to find my y-intercept, I'm going to substitute x is equal to 0 into my equation. Okay, and we'll look at some questions on how to find these things. Okay, but this is pretty much all the theory behind it. So let's take a look at some of the questions. So in this quadratic, y is equal to x minus 1, x plus 1. We have to find the x-intercepts. Okay, so there's going to be more than one. Okay, so to find the x-intercept, that is when y is equal to 0, correct? So in this equation, rewrite this whole thing, but instead of y, we're going to put 0. Okay, because we want to know what the x-intercept, which is when y is equal to 0. Okay, so there it is, when y is equal to 0. Now, if this bracket multiplied by this bracket equals to 0, then either this must be 0 or this must be 0. So either x minus 1 is equal to 0 or x plus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, then they will give us our two intercepts. So our first one, x is equal to 1, and our second one is x is equal to negative 2. Okay, and those are our two x-intercepts. Now finding the y-intercept, same thing. Y-intercept is going to be when x is equal to 0. So let's go back to our equation. We want to find our y-intercept. So to do that, I want you to substitute x is equal to 0. Okay, so leave your y in this case, because we're finding the y-intercept. So y is equal to, put your zeros in all the x's. Now let's simplify this. What do we get? We get y is equal to negative 2. Then that's my y-intercept. Okay, so x-intercept and y-intercept. Finding them is not hard at all. Okay, question 2. Well, we have a different quadratic. Let's find the x-intercepts. Again, to find the x-intercepts, that's when y is equal to 0. So let's rewrite this equation and make y equal to 0. So again, in here, either this bracket must be equal to 0 or this bracket must be equal to 0 for everything to equal to 0, right? So x plus 1 equals to 0 or x minus 3 equals to 0. Let's solve them each one. So x is equal to negative 1 or positive 3. Okay, they're my two x-intercepts. Now finding the y-intercept, that's when x is equal to 0. Okay, this is a bit more easier. We're just going to put 0 into my x's. Okay, so I want you to put that into your calculator or just figure it out if you can. And simplify, we get my y-intercept is y is equal to negative 6. Okay, so we have another quadratic. Finding the x-intercept. So finding the x-intercept, let's put y is equal to 0. Okay, and let's solve this. So we have two brackets again. Either this one is 0 or this one is 0 for them to all be 0 when they get multiplied. Okay, so here it is. The first one is 0 or the second one is 0. If we solve each one, what do we get? My x-intercepts are 2 and negative 3. Finding the y-intercept is when x is equal to 0, which is relatively a bit more easier. So putting zeros into these x's and just calculate it, and we get y is equal to 6 as being my y-intercept. Okay, so like I said, very easy finding the y-intercept and the x-intercepts. Okay, question 4. In this question, we have a bit of a different looking equation, but it's still a quadratic. Okay, let's find our x-intercept. x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. Very easy. So put 0 into y, and we're going to solve this. Okay, now this multiplied by this equals to 0. So either 2x must equal to 0, or this bracket x minus 1 must equal to 0. Okay, so if we solve them, well in this one, x must equal to 0. And in the next one, x must equal to positive 1. Okay, and they are our two intercepts, which is also the roots of this quadratic. Now finding the y-intercept. Again, finding the y-intercept is easy. We're just going to substitute x is equal to 0. Okay, so put your zeros into your x's. And we'll see that my y-intercept is also 0. Okay, so if I put 0 into the x's, I get y-intercept is 0. Okay, question 5. So y is equal to x minus 2 squared. Finding the x-intercept, let's make y equal to 0. There it is. And I want to find the value of x. So x minus 2 squared equals to 0. Okay, x minus 2 must equal to 0 as well then. Then x must equal to 2. Okay, and therefore that is my x-intercept. There's just one x-intercept. Okay, which means there's a double root at x equals to 2, it just bounces off there. Now find the y-intercept. So that's when x is equals to 0. So let's put x equals to 0 into my equation. Okay, 0 minus 2 squared is negative 2 squared, which is 4. Okay, so y is equal to 4 is my y-intercept. We're almost there. Okay, what about this one? Y is equal to x squared minus x minus 6. Find the x-intercepts. Okay, let's put y is equal to 0. Okay, so y is equal to 0, and we have our equation. We have a quadratic. Okay, to solve this quadratic, we're going to need to factorize it. Okay, so hopefully we already know how to factorize our quadratics. Okay, we get these two brackets. Okay, so if you factorize, we get x minus 2, x plus 3. Okay, so those two multiply equal to 0. That means this is equal to 0, or this is equal to 0. Solve each one, and we get x is equal to 2 and negative 3. Now on B, find the y-intercept. Okay, finding the y-intercept, put 0, 0 for x's, and we can see very nice and easy, y is equal to negative 6. And that's our y-intercept. So finding the x-intercept in this equation. Okay, so finding the x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. So like we said in the last question, we need to somehow solve this quadratic. And last question we did it by factorizing, but I want you to try and factorize this. Okay, now we'll be able to find that we actually can't factorize this at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to solve it, I'm going to use my quadratic formula. Okay, because in the end of the day, I just want to find what x is. So I'm going to use my quadratic formula, which looks really big and nasty, but it's not really. Okay, so using our quadratic formula, we should already know how to do. Okay, now one thing about this is if we simplify it, we can see inside my square root, we have a negative 12. Okay, well, what does that tell me? We can't really have a negative number inside my square root. Okay, so this answer is undefined. Okay, there is no solution for x. So there is no x value, then there is no x-intercept at all. Okay, now what kind of situation does a quadratic have no x-intercept? It's when if I have my x-axis like this and it's just all the way above. It doesn't even touch or cut the x-axis. Or it's just below and doesn't do this and doesn't touch it at all as well. Okay, so that's the situation where it has no x-intercepts. Okay, so finding the y-intercept. Okay, finding the y-intercept is very easy. Let's substitute x is equal to 0. Okay, so just put all your zeros into your x's, and we get y is equal to 4 is our y-intercept. Okay, so take note about this one. Okay, it's very important to know this. Y is equal to x squared minus 16. So finding the x-intercept, y is equal to 0. Let's factorize this guy. X minus 4, x plus 4. So this is a difference of 2 squares when we factorize this. Okay, so this one is 0 or this one is 0. X minus 4 equals to 0, x plus 4 equals to 0. If we solve it, we get my x-intercepts are x equals to 4 and negative 4. Find the y-intercept. Okay, put x equals to 0, simplify, we get y is equal to negative 16. Okay, very straightforward question for this one. Now y is equal to x squared plus 4. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So finding the x-intercept first of all. So finding the x-intercept, we're gonna make y is equal to 0 and solve this quadratic. Okay, so solving this equation, we want to find x. Okay, and we can't really factorize this as well. So what are we gonna do? Okay, well we don't need to do that. We're gonna move 4 to the other side, and we can see x squared is going to be a positive number. So that means x squared can never be a negative number like this. Okay, x squared can't be negative forever because x squared is always positive. Okay, then again, x is going to be undefined. Meaning, for question 9, this equation has no x-intercepts. Okay, so this is again a situation where it's just completely above the x-axis. Okay, it doesn't intercept the x-axis at all. Okay, what about the y-intercept? Well, y-intercept is straightforward. We're just going to substitute x is equal to 0. Okay, so put your 0 into here and simplify, we get y is equal to 4. Okay, and that's how we find our x and y intercepts.